Welcome to True Echo, where real stories echo louder than fiction. Today's story will challenge what you think you know about leadership, legacy, and quiet strength. This is the story of what happened when a black woman CEO went undercover to uncover the truth inside her own restaurant, and what followed will leave you speechless. Janelle Rhodes pushed open the heavy glass door of Pearl's table just before noon, her sneakers catching on the sticky edge of the tile floor. The dusty wind chime overhead gave a weak clink, like it had forgotten how to sing. No one looked up. No welcome in. No smile. The din of pop music bounced off three slick surfaces, a sharp contrast to the stillness of the place's soul. Pearl's table used to be different. Her mother had built it with her bare hands and a battered soup ladle, serving the community with love, discipline, and the kind of food that felt like forgiveness. But today, that warmth had faded. A girl with cotton candy pink hair leaned on the wall thumbing her phone, a busboy walked past her as if she were a ghost, and a couple of tables still sat cluttered from previous customers. Janelle scanned the space. A black woman in her 70s sat quietly near the bar, her pressed wool coat too fine for the way she was being ignored. Her glass had long since run dry. Across the room, a black couple waited, clearly unacknowledged. Yet, when two young white women walked in just moments later, the same staff who had turned their backs suddenly sprang to life, smiling, fussing, placing down silverware like they were presenting royal service. Janelle's jaw didn't clench. Her breath didn't quicken. But something deep in her stilled. She had spent months receiving quiet complaints, reading scathing Yelp reviews buried under politeness, inattentive, unwelcoming, not like it used to be. Now, she was living it. She sat at the window, unserved. Forgotten. She stood. Still no one noticed. But instead of leaving through the front, she turned left, down the hall toward the back alley, a place her mother once called the breathing door. It was where Pearl had gone to let out her frustration, her exhaustion, to clear her head before returning to the stove. Back there, hidden behind cardboard boxes and the faint stink of grease, Janelle heard them. The staff. You see that old lady? Bet she's already planning a Yelp novel, Zion, the young cook, laughed. Lyn's voice followed, popping gum between sentences. Ugh, they just sit there like they expect magic. Why even come here? And the new boss? Supposed to be a woman, someone added. Probably soft. Emotional. All talk, no heat. Janelle's fingers tightened on the cold door handle. She wasn't angry. Not yet. But something deeper moved inside her. This wasn't about rudeness. It was about rot. Quiet rot. Then Andre spoke. The old head cook. A man who had chopped onions for free at her mother's first charity night. You ever peel 40 pounds of carrots barehanded in a snowstorm, he said, his voice dry but heavy. That's what this place was built on. Grace. Real service. Silence. Then a scoff. Man, you stuck in the past, Zion muttered. A knife slammed the cutting board. Hard. And then Janelle stepped through the door. The kitchen fell still the moment Janelle stepped inside. Her boots made a soft, deliberate thud on the linoleum floor as every head turned, slowly, uncertainly, to face her. The fluorescent light above flickered once, catching the stunned expression on Andre's face. The others didn't recognize her. Not yet. But the way Andre froze, his knife still hovering mid-air, told them something had changed. Janelle didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout or demand attention. She simply walked over to the corner of the kitchen, her mother's corner. The stool was still there, tucked behind the storage rack like a sacred relic. Janelle sat down slowly, her hands brushing the worn edges of the prep counter. She found the faint nick in the stone, the same one Pearl had left behind slicing onions the night before her first anniversary special. She picked up a towel, dampened it under the tap, and began to wipe. Silence thickened the air as the others watched her clean the counter that hadn't been properly scrubbed in days. Every small circle of her hand seemed to erase more than just grime. It wiped away complacency. It cut through the fog of careless routines. Zion whispered something to Marcus, who didn't respond. Lynn, normally quick with snark, stood at the edge of the room, unmoving. Finally, Janelle stood up and walked over to Andre. "Mr. Andre," she said softly, but clearly. "Would you help me gather everyone for a staff meeting?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and the realization bloomed on his face like dawn. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice low with both awe and apology. "Right away." Within minutes, the entire staff stood packed into the kitchen. Zion looked annoyed, Marcus confused, Lynn quietly tense. Janelle held a tablet in one hand and a stylus in the other, but she didn't glance at either. Instead, she looked each of them in the eye. "I'm Janelle Rhodes," she said. "I'm the new owner of Pearl's Table. And I've been here since this morning. Watching. Listening." Now the color drained from Zion's face. Lynn gripped the edge of the prep counter. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the door like it might suddenly save him. "I saw customers waiting and ignored. Tables dirty. Staff distracted. But what struck me most wasn't the mess. It was the apathy. The way you looked at people, especially people who looked like me, and decided they didn't matter." She didn't name names. She didn't need to. Her words landed with precision. "I also heard the things said in this kitchen. Mocking our guests. Dismissing our values. And speaking about me, someone you'd never met, as if my worth could be measured by your assumptions." Zion started to open his mouth, but Janelle held up a hand. "Calm. Firm. No speeches from you today," she said. "This is a listening moment." She paced slowly, like her mother once did when delivering hard truths gently. "My mother built this restaurant on community, on kindness, on care. You've all inherited the name, but not the responsibility." Then she stopped walking. "So here's what we're going to do." Janelle lifted the tablet and tapped the screen. "Each of you will receive a message from me. It's not a termination notice. It's a proposal. A second chance." They exchanged looks. "In that message, you'll find two options. 1, you can recommit to this place. To the legacy. To a new standard of excellence. If you choose that, I'll match it, with training, new responsibilities, fair pay, and a clean slate." A pause. "Or, if this no longer feels like the place for you, that's okay too. You'll get 2 weeks' pay and a respectful exit." The weight of her offer settled over the room. It wasn't just a challenge. It was a mirror. "You choose," she said. "But if you stay, you rebuild. No shortcuts. No gossip. No indifference. Real work. Real service." Andre nodded slowly behind her, his presence like a steady anchor. "I'm not looking for perfect employees," Janelle added. "I'm looking for people with integrity. For those who understand that every plate, every smile, every guest matters. Especially the ones who get ignored." Silence held. Zion leaned against the doorframe, arms folded tight. "What if someone doesn't buy into the whole legacy speech?" he muttered. Janelle didn't blink. "Then they should leave. Today." It wasn't cruel. It was clarity. And for the first time in years, Pearl's Table felt quiet in the right way, not empty, but humbled. Behind Janelle, Andre finally spoke. "She's not asking you to worship a name. She's asking you to give a damn." Janelle looked around one last time, then nodded to Andre. "Let's get back to work." The meeting had ended, but its echo lingered in every corner of the kitchen. No one went back to their tasks right away. Even the fryer seemed quieter, the usual sizzle now a soft whisper beneath the tension in the air. Zion stood with his arms still folded, but something about his posture had shifted. He wasn't puffed up with bravado anymore. Instead, he looked uncertain, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure if he should leap or retreat. Janelle moved to the back of the restaurant, past the narrow hallway where her mother once kept extra aprons and secret recipes tucked in folders. She needed a moment. Not to cry, there was no room for that right now, but to breathe. To absorb. She leaned against the wall, the faint scent of cinnamon and cleaning supplies swirling around her like a memory. In the distance, she heard the front bell jingle, the entrance door swinging open. Another customer. Back to business. But business, she reminded herself, would not go back to usual. She returned to her spot behind the divider wall near the kitchen's entrance. From there, she could watch. Not just supervise, but observe, quietly, without commanding. It's what her mother always said was the real art of running a restaurant: watch their hearts, not just their hands. Out front, the new guest had stepped up to the counter, a young black teen in a soaked hoodie, rain clinging to his hair, sneakers squelching quietly on the tile. He pulled out a handful of coins and crumpled bills, laying them gently on the counter as if afraid they might run away. I'd like a burger and fries, he said, his voice quick and nervous. I've got enough. I promise. I don't want trouble. Zion turned from drying dishes, glanced at the kid, and didn't miss a beat. Another one from the group home, he said, not bothering to whisper. What are we now, a soup kitchen? For a moment, Janelle didn't move. She wanted to see what would happen next. If anything would change. Lynn, usually quick with a laugh, didn't smile. She looked at the boy, then at the bills, then back at Zion. Something in her eyes was shifting. But old habits ran deep. She stepped forward anyway. Where'd you get the money, kid? She asked, not harsh, but not soft either. You didn't do anything stupid, did you? The question might have been instinct, but it landed like a slap. The boy flinched. A real, visible flinch. He backed up, his hand brushing against a water glass on the edge of the tray beside him. It tipped and fell, soaking his sleeve and splashing onto the floor. Everyone froze. The kitchen went silent. The boy looked panicked, like he'd just triggered something he couldn't take back. And then Janelle stepped forward. She didn't shout. Didn't scold. She simply reached for a towel, walked up to the boy, and handed it to him with both hands. It's okay, she said quietly. Go ahead and take a seat. Your burger's on the way. What would you like to drink? The boy blinked, still stunned. Water, he said. With ice, please. Zion dropped his dish rag onto the counter with a sharp slap. Seriously? Who exactly are we serving now? Are we just feeding everyone who walks through the door? He was staring straight at Janelle, daring her again. But she didn't look at him. She turned away without a word. That silence, calm and powerful, spoke volumes. It was a rejection, not of him as a person, but of the poison he still carried. She moved to the drink station, sliced a fresh orange, and carefully placed a wedge on the edge of a clean glass of ice water. She set it on the table in front of the boy, Kion, she saw on the red wristband from the shelter. Then she placed a clean napkin next to the drink and stepped back. Kion sat like he wasn't sure he was allowed to breathe. Then, slowly, he picked up the glass and took a sip. He glanced around the room, trying to make himself small, invisible. But Janelle wasn't letting him vanish. She gave him a small nod, nothing grand, just enough to say, "You're seen." Back behind the counter, Andre picked up the burger patty, added seasoning he hadn't used in weeks, and began building the order with care. Not just a burger. Not just fries. A meal someone could feel in their chest. Pearl's way. Lynn watched it all quietly, wiping the spill with slow, deliberate strokes. She wasn't rolling her eyes. She wasn't smirking. Her face looked blank at first. But if you looked close, really close, there was something else underneath, reflection. And Janelle? She returned to the sink and kept washing glasses. The water ran warm. The towel in her hand soaked through, but she didn't care. This wasn't about one boy or one meal. This was about setting a tone, building a rhythm, resetting what this place meant. She thought of the countless people who had walked through these doors, hungry not just for food, but for respect. Dignity. Humanity. If Zion couldn't understand that, he'd walk. And if Lynn couldn't change, she'd fade out too. But today, something had shifted. And it wasn't loud. It was quiet. Like a whisper rising after too much noise. The afternoon light filtering through the tall front windows had softened into gold, casting long lines across the floorboards of Pearl's table. The moment with Kion still lingered in the air, not just for him, but for everyone who had witnessed it. He sat quietly now, eating his burger with both hands, his elbows tucked close to his ribs like he was still unsure if he belonged. But Janelle had seen it, something in his shoulders had relaxed, just slightly, like a wall starting to crumble. Back behind the counter, Andre moved with purpose again. His hands didn't rush. Every slice of tomato, every turn of the spatula had care in it. The kitchen felt warmer. Not in temperature, but in tone. And then, the bell above the door jingled again. A woman stepped in, older, proud posture, silver-gray hair pulled back neatly under a knitted hat. Her coat was old but clean, buttoned high against the wind outside. She didn't walk like someone unsure of where she was. She walked like someone who had once belonged to a place and was trying to see if she still did. She approached the counter and stood there quietly for a few moments. The menu in her hand was slightly crumpled at the edges, like she'd held it for a while before deciding to come in. Lynn stood at the register, stiff. The woman didn't speak at first. She just looked at Lynn with the kind of eyes that have seen too much to be easily rattled. Then she said, "I was once refused service here." Her voice wasn't bitter. It was low, even, and calm. Just for being a black woman in an old sweater. Didn't yell. Didn't curse. Just watched them pass me by like I didn't matter. The kitchen stopped again. No clang of pans. No chatter. Even Zion, still wiping down the prep counter, looked up. "I didn't come to blame," the woman continued, her gaze gentle but steady. "I came back because I remember what Pearl's table used to mean. And I want to believe it can mean that again." Lynn opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at the woman. Really looked. Her usual sharp edges softened. For the first time all day, she wasn't hiding behind sarcasm or snide glances. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the sides of the counter. The woman didn't push further. She simply nodded once, stepped back, and found herself a seat. Janelle watched from the back, heart steady. She saw the exchange. Saw Lyn's silence, not the kind born of defiance, but of awakening. Lynn wasn't used to being faced with the consequences of indifference. Most people weren't. Near the drink station, Kion glanced at the woman, then at Lynn. For a second, the three of them, young boy, middle-aged worker, elder woman, seemed to form a triangle of understanding without a single word spoken. Zion exhaled sharply and tossed his towel onto the sink. "I'm out," he muttered. "This whole place is turning into a church sermon." But he didn't leave. Not yet. He paced near the back door, grumbling under his breath, unsure whether he was mad at the place or at himself. Janelle approached him carefully. "You're welcome to go," she said, without anger. "You're also welcome to stay. But only if you're ready to stop being loud just to keep from listening." He didn't answer. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Instead of pushing, Janelle turned away. She had no intention of dragging anyone into transformation. That was a personal choice. And some people simply weren't ready. Later, as the dinner rush began, something remarkable happened. Two women came in together, one black, one white, laughing about a shared college memory. They were greeted by Lynn, who offered menus with a slight bow of her head, and asked, with a quiet sincerity, "How's your day going so far?" They blinked in surprise. Then smiled. Moments like these weren't fireworks. They were embers. Small, glowing signs that something long dormant was starting to come back to life. Near the corner of the dining area, the older woman in the gray coat had yet to order. She simply sat with her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea, watching the room like she was seeing an old friend come home. And then Zion stepped forward. He walked up to Janelle near the kitchen's edge. His voice wasn't loud this time. In fact, it barely rose above the hum of the fridge motor behind them. "I don't hate this place," he said. "I just don't think I'm ready for what you're building here." Janelle nodded slowly. "Then I'll honor that." His shoulders dropped, like the weight of pretending finally fell off. "I'd like to leave," he said, not looking her in the eye. "No drama. Just, quietly." "You'll get full pay for your time," she replied. "And a reference, if you ever need one." He nodded and started to turn. But she added one more thing, her voice soft but strong. "The door will still be here, Zion. Just in case one day, you are ready." He didn't reply. But something in his step slowed as he left. It wasn't victory. It wasn't defeat. It was a chapter closing. And in its place, a new one began, one written by people choosing to care, moment by moment. The transformation of Pearl's table wasn't finished. But it had finally begun. The next morning, Pearl's table woke with a quieter energy. The kind that lingers after a storm has passed, where everything feels newly tender and strangely alive. Janelle arrived just after sunrise, the front windows still fogged from the cold dawn air outside. She carried no clipboard, no phone. Just an old cloth napkin from her mother's personal drawer, ivory-colored, frayed at the corners, embroidered with two simple words, "Pearl's Grace." She walked slowly across the floor, taking in the stillness. The chairs were neatly pushed in. No napkins on the floor. No greasy fingerprints on the counter. It wasn't perfect, but it was intentional. She set the napkin down beside the menu board and reached for the cleaner, spraying it gently, then began wiping in smooth, quiet strokes. With each motion, it felt less like maintenance and more like memory. Her mother had done this every morning. Before the cooks arrived, before the first order was called, before even the sun fully climbed the horizon. It was never about the chalk or the dust. It was about grounding herself before opening the doors to the world. Behind her, she heard a small voice. "Who's Miss Pearl?" Janelle turned. A little girl, no older than 6, stood beside Lynn, her hand wrapped around the cashier's pinky finger. Her pigtails were perfectly braided, and her eyes wide with curiosity. Lynn looked startled at the question, unsure how to answer. Then, slowly, she crouched beside the girl and said, she was the kind of woman who gave away warm pies to people soaked from the rain, and believed everyone, no matter who they were, deserved to be treated with kindness. The words came slowly, as if she were hearing them herself for the first time. Janelle's breath caught. Not because of the little girl, but because of the change in Lynn's tone. The usual sharpness was gone. In its place, something softer. Something earned. The girl smiled, satisfied with the answer, and walked over to trace her finger along the embroidered letters on the napkin. "Pearl's Grace." She repeated the words out loud like they were magic. The restaurant began to fill again by mid-morning. Regulars who had once disappeared were now trickling back in. Not because of marketing or coupons, but because of word of mouth. Rumors. Whispers. That Pearl's table was changing. One of the first guests that day was a man in his 70s with a walking cane and a photo of Pearl framed in his wallet. "I used to eat here with my wife," he told Janelle. Before cancer took her. She loved the blackberry pie. I haven't been back since. Janelle nodded and placed a slice of blackberry pie in front of him herself. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Kion was rinsing breakfast dishes. His hands were clumsy, sure, but focused. Andre had given him a simple job: wash, rinse, dry. It wasn't glamorous. But to Kion, it felt like purpose. He worked in rhythm, humming softly to himself. Andre watched him from the stove, then walked over, placed a gentle hand on Kion's shoulder, and showed him how to stack the clean dishes without chipping the edges. "You're not just cleaning," he said. "You're setting the tone. Every plate matters." Kion nodded. "Back when I started, Pearl told me something," Andre continued. "She said a good restaurant feeds the body, but a great one feeds the dignity, too." That phrase hung in the air. Kion didn't say anything. But his shoulders squared just a bit more. In the front of the house, Lynn moved more deliberately now. She still had the phone tucked in her apron, but she didn't look at it. Instead, she wiped menus between guests and asked children if they wanted apple juice or milk with their breakfast. Change didn't roar. It whispered. In cleaner corners, in quieter tones, in second glances that turned into real ones. At one point, a young couple walked in, biracial, holding hands, their energy shy and unsure. Janelle noticed them scanning the room like they were bracing for something. She stepped forward. "Welcome to Pearl's table," she said with warmth. "Sit anywhere you like." They blinked, startled. Then smiled. They chose a window seat. Later, when Janelle passed by with their check, the young woman stopped her and said, "I used to come here when I was a girl. We stopped after my mom was asked to leave for asking for a to-go box. That was years ago." Janelle met her eyes. "I'm sorry that happened." The woman nodded. "I can tell this place is different now." And in that moment, Janelle knew it was working. Not because she had fired people. Not because she had made a speech. But because the space had changed, through dignity. Through choice. Through presence. Near closing, Kion approached her nervously. "Miss Janelle," he asked. "Do you think I could maybe learn to cook something simple tomorrow?" She didn't hesitate. "I think that's a perfect place to start." He beamed. And when he left that day, he didn't rush out the back door. He left through the front. And said goodbye. Like he knew he had somewhere worth returning to. The next few days at Pearl's table unfolded like the early chapters of a new book, one written not in ink, but in action. Every small gesture added another line to the story of redemption that was quietly taking shape. And while the past still hung in the corners like faded wallpaper, the future began pressing forward with every plate passed, every guest greeted with care. Janelle came in earlier now. Not out of obligation, but to simply feel the space when it was most honest, before the staff arrived, before the scent of onions filled the kitchen, before the rush of orders and conversation. She would sit at the window with coffee in a ceramic mug her mother once used, the same crack near the rim still faintly visible, and think about legacy, not as a burden, but as a light passed hand to hand. That morning, she walked into the kitchen and found Kion already there. He wasn't on the clock yet, but he was setting up stations, neatly, quietly, with a focus that made Janelle pause in the doorway. Andre stood beside him, instructing softly as they diced carrots for the soup of the day. "Keep your fingers curled," he said. "You're not just cutting food, you're shaping someone's experience. This carrot might be the one that ends up in a widow's bowl of comfort." Kion grinned. "You always talk like a philosopher." Andre chuckled. "I cook like one too." The back door opened, and to everyone's surprise, Zion stepped in. He wasn't wearing a uniform. Just jeans and a plain hoodie. He looked around, awkward. Still proud, but quieter now. Andre saw him first. You forget something, kid. Zion shrugged. Nah. I kept thinking about what Miss Rhodes said. About choice. I'm not saying I'm ready to start over. But I am saying, I miss this place. Not the work. The way it used to feel. Janelle entered the kitchen, towel in hand, her brow raised. That's honest, she said. And rare. Zion swallowed. I don't want back in yet. I just wanted to ask if maybe I could hang around. Help out. Watch a bit. See if I can remember why I liked cooking in the first place. Janelle exchanged a look with Andre, who gave a slow nod. Help Andre with prep, Janelle said. No pay today. Just presents. Zion nodded. Fair. There was no grand applause. No welcome back banner. Just the soft sound of knives hitting cutting boards as two young men, one previously jaded, the other once lost, worked side by side. By lunch, the place was busy. The woman in the silver coat had returned, this time with her church friend. They ordered 2 teas and shared a slice of blackberry pie, whispering about the changes they felt but couldn't name. The air was different, they said. The music was softer, the service more attentive. They called it peace. Lynn moved across the floor with grace that hadn't been there before. She no longer barked orders at the line. She checked glasses for lipstick marks before setting them down, bent slightly to speak to elders at eye level, and asked one child if she wanted her juice with a silly straw. The girl squealed with delight. Her parents watched, visibly moved. Janelle noticed it all but stayed out of the way. She had come to learn something her mother always preached but never put into words: transformation doesn't need a narrator. It needs consistency. It needs patience. It needs leaders who don't always lead with a bullhorn, but with example. Later that afternoon, as the lunch rush dwindled, the door chimed again. This time, a sharply dressed woman walked in, clipboard in hand, leather boots tapping with intent. She scanned the room with the practiced eye of someone who judged service for a living. Health inspector? Critic? No one was sure. Lynn approached her, smile practiced but calm. Welcome to Pearl's table, she said, not overly cheerful, not dismissive. Would you prefer a window seat or something more quiet in the back? The woman raised an eyebrow. Back, please. She was seated and handed a menu without delay. Water arrived with lemon and a linen napkin, folded neatly. Andre sent out a small sample of the day's soup, chickpea and roasted carrot, spiced gently with cumin and cinnamon. This is from the chef, Lynn explained. Just a small taste while you look through the menu. The woman nodded slowly. I'm impressed already. Janelle watched from the back hallway. When the woman left an hour later, she handed a card to Lynn. You're not just turning this place around, she said. You're building something people will talk about. Good talk. On the card was a local restaurant blogger's name, one with a significant following. Underneath, handwritten, come see me if you ever want to run your own. Lynn stared at it like it might disappear. Janelle approached her later, while she was wrapping up receipts. I didn't plan for any of this, Lynn said, holding the card with shaking fingers. I know, Janelle replied. But you showed up for it. She smiled, placed a hand on Lynn's shoulder. Pearl always said leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about learning faster than you used to. And choosing better. For the first time since the day Janelle walked in Undercover, Lynn truly smiled, not to deflect, not out of nervous habit, but out of pride. I think I'm finally getting it, she said. Outside, dusk had begun its slow descent. Lights flickered on across the neighborhood. But inside Pearl's table, something far more important was lighting up. Not the signs. The people. And the legacy they were choosing to carry forward, one honest step at a time. The final shift of the week arrived with a quiet kind of grace. The regulars were back. The wait times had shortened. The staff moved with a rhythm that felt earned, not forced. Pearl's table no longer sounded like a place going through the motions, it hummed with purpose. Like a heart that had relearned how to beat. That morning, Janelle entered through the front instead of the side door. It was intentional. Symbolic. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't walking in as an investigator, or even just the owner. She walked in as a witness to a resurrection. At the front, Kion was wiping down menus. His work was steady, confident now. He no longer shrank behind the register or whispered when he greeted guests. There was something in the way he moved, shoulders back, chin high, that told Janelle all she needed to know. He believed he belonged. Andre was already in the kitchen prepping sweet potatoes for a new brunch dish they were testing. The smell of cinnamon and cloves filled the air. He looked up when he saw her and gave a nod. Nothing more. That was his way. But behind his eyes was something warm. Pride. Lynn was training a new hire. A shy young woman named Destiny who had just moved into the neighborhood. Instead of lecturing, Lynn walked beside her, showed her how to fold napkins the right way, how to make eye contact when taking an order. She explained that Pearls wasn't just about food, it was about presence. And Zion? He hadn't returned for another shift. But he had sent an email. A real one. Miss Rhodes. I just wanted to say thank you for not throwing me out when I was being loud and stupid. I wasn't ready then. But I think one day, I might be. If there's ever a spot, I'll be better. I'm working on myself first. Zion. Janelle read it twice before closing her laptop that night. She didn't cry. But she did sit still for a long time, listening to the silence of her apartment like it was music. Now, at the restaurant, it was nearing lunch and the flow had started. A familiar figure entered just before noon, the elderly black woman in the silver coat. She moved slowly, but with certainty. Her eyes scanned the room, catching every detail. Janelle greeted her personally. Welcome back, she said. The woman smiled. You've done good here, she replied. Your mama would be proud. She built the bones, Janelle said softly. I just had to find the spine again. They laughed. It wasn't loud. But it was rich with meaning. The woman sat at her usual table. This time, her tea arrived before she even asked. Warm, with honey on the side. Later that afternoon, the woman called Janelle over. From her purse, she pulled out a tiny, folded piece of yellowing paper. She placed it in Janelle's hand. What's this? A recipe, the woman said. Your mama gave it to me years ago when I was struggling. It's for her sweet potato cobbler. I never got it quite right, but I thought maybe, it's time it came home. Janelle's fingers trembled as she unfolded the note. The handwriting was familiar. Loopy. Smudged from age. But the measurements were clear, and at the bottom was a line that made her throat tighten. For those who walk in with nothing, and still deserve everything. That evening, Janelle called an all-staff meeting, this time not for correction, but for celebration. In the center of the kitchen, she held up the paper. This is the next special, she said. And I want all of us to cook it together. So they did. Destiny mixed the filling. Andre rolled out the dough. Kion monitored the oven like a surgeon. Lynn whipped the topping. And when the timer finally dinged, and the cobbler came out piping hot, smelling like memory, they all gathered around the prep table. Janelle took the first bite. Tears threatened, but she held them back with a smile. It tastes like home, she whispered. Later, after closing, they shared the cobbler with a few of the last guests still lingering. People who had come in curious, skeptical. But who were leaving with their hands warm from to-go cups and their hearts a little lighter. As the chairs were stacked and the lights dimmed, Janelle lingered near the front. She looked around at the worn booths, the dusty corners still left to fix, the tiny bell above the door that would always ring a little off-key. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest now. And in a world that too often rushed past truth, that was enough. As she locked the door behind her, she looked up at the sign above. Pearl's Table. Not a brand. Not just a business. But a place where people came to be seen, fed, remembered, and given the chance to begin again. Sometimes the strongest leadership doesn't come from yelling, it comes from listening, from humility, and from walking into a broken room with the courage to rebuild. Janelle Rhodes didn't fire her staff to prove a point. She gave them a choice, and that changed everything. As her mother once said, you can't cook angry. You have to put your hurt down before you pick up the ladle. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the quiet power of grace, please subscribe to True Echo. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your voice.